sometimes struggle to get up in the morning or wind down for bed at night? I used to find it so difficult. I woke up with no sense of positivity and brightness. I was void of motivation and spirit. This changed completely when I started waking up with a Lumi body clock. These incredible devices mimic the light and colour of a real sunrise and sunset, transforming the experience of waking up and going to sleep completely. Rather than being suddenly woken up with an alarm clock, the Lumi body clock will wake you up gradually with a natural sunrise. The Lumi body clock has been shown to improve the quality of sleep and awakening and to boost mood and productivity in clinical trials. You can personalise your sunrise and sunset from 15 to 90 minutes with their clinically tested unique natural light and more than 20 sleep and wake sounds. We all deserve to sleep well and to wake up feeling fresh. So if you're finding this a challenge and you want to try a new approach, go to lumi.com.
I've done a fair amount of episodes of this podcast, and I love, a lot of new music that's not necessarily, exactly what I would spend every day listening to, but the songs, the records that you're making are really, really special and extraordinary. And I just want to say how much of a fan I am of them. And so thank you very much for coming on the show.
That's really sweet. Thank you. I bet is that your opener with every guest, isn't it?
I promise it's not. And I've spoken to people who have had really long careers and stuff who, obviously I would say that to some guests, and some guests I love their stuff, but I don't hear music like the type that you're making that often anymore. I don't know. So yeah,
very much.
Really, really awesome. So my first question is, what is the first thing that drew you to music at all?
As in to try and make my own, or as in just
enjoying
as a listener?
What made you love it?
What made me love it? I think my first kind of musical obsession was with Queen, randomly, which is quite odd because it's nothing like the music that I make today. But I have one of my earliest memories is my auntie Lynn. I spoke about this before actually, driving me around. I don't know where we were going in the car, and Bohemian Rhapsody coming on the radio, and early, I must be 4 or 5, really young, and she just screamed it word for word as we were sort of pelting down the street, and I just thought it was hysterical. When I was only young, I didn't have a clue. I was thinking what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? I'd never heard anything like it. And I think there might be stuff before that, but that's the clearest memory I can think of, listening to music and kind of getting some sort of emotional reaction out of it. Before that, I'm sure it must have just been nursery rhymes and stuff. But that's my first kind of, the first one I can think of was listening to Bohemian Rhapsody with my aunt. And then I remember my dad getting me the greatest hits of Queen, and I just used to play it on the stereo system over and over and over again, Bohemian Rhapsody, just forever and ever. I just thought it was fucking hysterical. And I sort of gradually got into all the other tunes on the I'm sure it was a CD. I don't think it was long ago enough to be a little cassette tape. And then I remember my mum and dad kind of letting me listen to Queen without ever telling me that Freddie Mercury was dead. And I remember, because I was so young, and I remember learning later on that he weren't alive anymore, and I was fucking devastated. I'd been a fan of his for years, but never known about. Oh, hold on, sorry, I think that's my WhatsApp going off on the computer. I'd never known about his life or what happened to him. But yeah, I think that's the first kind of real memory I have of music, is getting into Bohemian Rhapsody with my auntie, which is weird. It's quite different, yeah, exactly to the kind of stuff that I write and the kind of stuff that I put out today.
Yeah, I guess even though it's it was produced without any digital stuff, all of that music, it's still very produced. The backing vocals and everything, there's so much on those records. Did you ever watch when you started becoming a Queen fan, the Freddie Mercury, the Queen gig at Wembley, I think it's 1986, where he's in the yellow jacket?
Yeah, I know that one. I was obsessed with that as a kid. Like I could kind of recite it word for word. You know what I mean? Sing along. Even the shit that he was saying to the audience. Like I was obsessed with it growing up. And it's still like that stuff still stands up, man. Like when you watch them performances, like there's a reason he's so revered, isn't there? He's just fucking unbelievable. And like I used to sort of, me and my mates, like before I got, this is even before I was, well, maybe around the time I was writing my own stuff, but like we became obsessed with like bands of that kind of era, like sort of, you know, I remember me and my best friend B kind of discovering like Led Zeppelin through our dads and stuff, and like Led Zeppelin, Queen and Hendrix and stuff. And we'd just sit for hours like on YouTube, sending each other like, listen to like Robert Plant sing this, like off a bootleg from like 1971 or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, or listen to like Freddie Mercury singing, like his voice was peak here. Do you know what I mean? This night he was having an off night. That night he was like in full voice, like just like proper. Probably like one of the only things I've ever really been like a geek about was like them sort of. You know, I still do it now, to be honest. I'm on like YouTube watching like bootlegs of like Smith's gigs and things like that. Do you know what I mean? I can sort of weirdly, like I have Spotify, I have Apple and Spotify on my phone, and like I listen to that. That's how I listen to music when I'm out and about. Do you know what I mean? Like most people, like if I'm in the gym or running. But like if I'm indoors, randomly, I normally go on YouTube. Like I could sit there for hours just going through YouTube, like from video to video, like listening to like live performances and stuff like that. But yeah, that particular the Queen Wembley one, I think I had that on DVD. I'm sure I did when I was a kid.
That type of being a fan,
yeah,
where you're going on YouTube and like looking up live performances and you know, spotting the differences and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Who, other than Queen, you mentioned the Smiths, Led Zeppelin, what type of bands would you be like that kind of into enough where you would kind of think, I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to check out what they're doing live? Would it be everybody, or would there be certain bands that you would be?
I mean, like I remember kind of having like my music almost shifting. Like I think everyone goes through it when you're, you know, I never had that like rebelling against my mum and dad's music kind of phase, because I always liked the music that my mum and dad played in the house. You know what I mean? Like my dad was into kind of sort of classic rock stuff, and like he introduced me to like David Bowie and Elton John, and like he was kind of who got me into Queen, and he was obsessed with like Led Zeppelin and stuff. And then my mum was always into like Motown and loved Stevie Wonder and like Rod Stewart and people like that as well. Sort of more sort of soul-y stuff. And like I kind of, yeah, I was kind of obsessed with those sort of artists, and I definitely would have been looking at them on YouTube and watching them. Like live was always what I was obsessed with. I love records, obviously, but like I used to think, can he fucking hit that note live? Do you know what I mean? Like Stevie Wonder, can he do that sort of, can he play that piano part live, or is that just some sort of fucking studio trick? Obviously he can he can do fucking everything. But and then like my music, so I was obsessed, yeah, like that sort of like I was saying with the Led Zeppelin bootlegs and the Queen bootlegs and all that sort of stuff. And then like when I sort of my early teens, that's when I kind of discovered what I'd call like my music, and like sort of like the Smiths being the biggest one was like a bit of a, I don't know, like a wake up for me musically. I'd never really heard anything like it. And obviously like things like Oasis as well, and like The Cure and stuff. And then I'd be obsessed over them sort of bands, and like Jeff Buckley and things like that. And I'd be on YouTube watching those sort of bands, those sort of performances. And I used to be obsessed with, I still do it now, like a fucking weirdo, but like I'm obsessed with set lists. Like, there's like a really good website called like setlist.com, something like that. And like,
FM.
Is it F? That's it. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know why. I'll be going back to like fucking like the Smiths in like 1980 or like whenever it was when they were like doing the Queen is Dead, like them sort of records. And I'd think, oh mate, look at that set list there. Like imagine being at that gig. You know what I mean? Like their last show at Brixton, like looking at the set list and things like that. Or like, yeah, like Jeff Buckley going through like the set list he used to play, like in the sort of little intimate shows that he used to do. I don't know why. I do that with artists that I'm not even that interested in. It's a bit of an obsession. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, that it's, I guess it's like when you're a music fan, that's the sort of stuff that you sort of geek out over, ain't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And finding out what people play in a set is like, it's very interesting, because sometimes there'll be a song there that maybe wasn't on the radio or whatever, that's amazing, and that they play live like all the time.
Yeah.
And it's actually one of their best songs, but it was just never.
Yeah, exactly. Or you think, you can almost pinpoint the date when like a band falls out of love with one of their tunes. Do you know what I mean? All of a sudden it fucking disappears from the set list. Do you know what I mean? Forever. Yeah. And then I'll be like, oh, it comes back there like 7 years later. I sound like a right weirdo now I'm talking about this. I've never actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, I've never thought about it before, but it's actually quite a weird thing to do. But yeah, and it's sort of,
bands will do that and use set list.
Yeah, man.
That's speaking out is all part of the love of it.
Especially like I'm sort of doing like my live shows, and it's like I'm almost take inspiration from my inspirations. Like, oh, what would they open with? They'd open with like a banger, and then they'd play some moody tunes. Do you know what I mean? And then they'd finish with a banger, like that sort of thing. Like I'm almost like, I'm kind of like piecing my set lists together and taking kind of notes from like the best off of Setlist FM. Do you know what I mean? But
you're a fan of like some of the best acts ever, so it's a good thing to be doing. When did you start making your own music though?
When did I start?
Yeah.
It's a bit like we basically moved into, when I was, I think 14, we moved house, like me and my mum and dad and my sister, and in the new gaff, the old lady that had lived there before, she just left this piano. She just didn't want it. It was like it was a piece of shit, to be honest. Like, it was completely out of tune, and like the sustain pedal was broken, and it was absolutely battered. And I said to my dad, like, oh, like, I'll play that. And I think he gave me like a month or something like that. It was like, you can have it for a month, and if you ain't playing it, like, we're fucking it off. Do you know what I mean? That sort of thing. And I just kind of really got into it. Like, I sort of would sit there, I'd come home from school and sit there for hours just playing. It was like, I don't even know what the year it was, but like, I remember YouTube weren't that long out. Do you know what I mean? And it's like people had started putting up, because I can't read music for shit. You know what I mean? I'm not like a technical musician, but I would sit there and watch people say like, this is how you play, you know, fucking Let It Be by the Beatles or something like that. And, I've got quite a good ear. Like, I could listen to something and kind of work out the chords and things like that. And sort of before that, randomly, like me, well, not randomly, but like me and my mates had got into Eminem, like in primary school, which to this day, I don't know how the fuck our parents let us listen to Eminem when we were that young. But, and that had led us to kind of, it weren't like rap battles, but we just used to write rhymes, just kind of who could be the most sort of harsh and the most scathing about the other person. Do you know what I mean? And I, for some reason, had a knack. You know what I mean? I was really, I could cross the line the most and make it rhyme. So that was kind of the aim of the game. And randomly, that's literally how I started writing. Like, it sounds a bit pompous to call it poetry, but like, that was my first lyrics, was like just me taking the piss out of all my mates at a really young age. And then I'd sort of carried on doing it privately, like not necessarily just taking the piss out of my mates, but just writing little rhymes and stuff. And it wasn't until we moved into this new gaff and the piano was there, and I started playing the piano, that I started kind of putting the two together. And then I worked out that I was writing songs, but again, just like for fun in my sort of spare time, and was kind of terrified by it at first, because I was just like, I don't know, I just thought like, what the fuck are you doing? And then I remember showing one mate a song and him loving it, and showing another mate a song and him loving it, and like a really sweet reaction when I'm looking back at it, because I was terrified that they'd be like, what the fuck are you doing, you idiot? Do you know what I mean? Like, and then I showed my family, and everyone was like, and at first they were just songs, again, like taking the piss out of my mates, like about the same sort of group of friends that I'd grown up with since I was young. To be honest, my music now is pretty much about the same group of people and the same environment. But I sort of gradually started showing them it. And then I remember once, like, I wrote this randomly, it's like the first single I ever released off of my debut EP. It's called London's Requiem. And it was just a different kind of tune. It was like serious, do you know what I mean? And then it took me ages to show them this sort of serious tune, because I thought, oh, like, it's all well and good, you're having a laugh and taking the piss out of your mates, but like, if you're going to start taking yourself seriously, you know, you look like a bit of an arsehole. And again, like, I sort of built up the courage to show me mates, like, oh, this song's actually, like, it ain't, you know, taking the piss out of each other. It's actually something that I think is quite serious. And the same sort of reaction, they were like, oh man, this is class, like, you should put it out. And it was kind of with encouragement from my friends that I started putting stuff online, and just uploading them, filmed like quite terribly on, like, I think the first videos I did were like on an iPad, you know what I mean? And I put them out, started uploading tunes kind of weekly onto YouTube. And one thing led to another, and I kind of, that's kind of the start of how I started making my own music, I guess.
So you were completely like self-taught on that piano, basically. Had you never played like music basically before then?
No, I couldn't. And like, don't get me wrong, it's not like some fucking beautiful scene from a movie where I sat down at the piano and all of a sudden my mum and dad were like, fucking hell, he's a genius. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm to this day, like, still very basic. As soon as I learned chords, I was like, oh, this will do. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm a lazy musician. I'm more of a writer in my head. Do you know what I mean? Like a songwriter, singer than a singer songwriter. But yeah, no, I'd never played anything before.
That's for people listening, because a lot of people listening who might want to make their own music, like, might think, you know, you literally need to go and like learn to read music and spend like hours and hours doing scales to write an amazing song.
Nah, man. I mean, some people maybe like go down that path. Like, don't get me wrong, I wish I was a better, more sort of efficient or trained musician than I am, but it was never the focus for me, even though it is like that side of it. Like, for me, it was all about the writing. I just wanted to write these stories and tell these tales of, like, basically me and my mates. And I knew that I had a decent enough voice to kind of carry it off. But I never, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, there are days where I'm writing and I'm like, oh, there's a chord here that I can hear in my head, but I'm not good enough to play it. And it might take me a while sort of fucking about on the guitar. But I don't consider myself to be like a trained musician by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think, it's never really got in my way. Do you know what I mean? I'm kind of, but then I guess it's the type of musician that I am. Do you know what I mean? I never.
All the people in, not all, but so many people in like rock music, pop music. I mean, none of the Beatles could read. None of them. I mean, Paul McCartney even is not like that, like proficient technically at anything other than bass. So it's
he's shit, isn't he? He's shit, Paul. He's proper shit. No, I'll never really. I don't know. As soon as if I can sing along to something, I never actually, like, to be honest, like, when I started writing was when I was into like the Smiths and stuff like that and Oasis, and it was that kind of figure, the Morrissey and Liam Gallagher thing, that I wanted to do. I never wanted to be a player at all. Like, I just wanted to write the tunes and sing the tunes. I had to learn how to play the piano and the guitar because none of my mates were fucking interested at all. Like, do you know what I mean? I couldn't give a shit. They are now. It's going relatively well. They're like, oh, fuck, I should have learned to play the bass. Do you know what I mean? But it was like through necessity, basically, that I kind of started teaching myself, really. And I enjoyed it at the time. I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong. But I never had these kind of... Once I could play a bar chord, I was like, this is probably about as good as I need to get. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can pretty much get away with this, I think. I've got about one or two strumming patterns up my sleeve. Do you know what I mean?
So it sounds like your circle of friends was like, it wasn't like kind of founded on music. It's like you weren't kind of in like this kind of music bubble. anything like that?
No, not at all. My I've got a few different groups of mates, but my oldest group of mates and like my best friends are just from my area, and we either went to the same primary school. Like, so there's basically the first EP that I wrote was called the Moorland EP, which is about this estate in North London where like my mum's side of the family live. And then the second EP that's coming out March 25th. See that? Plugged it. There we go. Getting good at this. That's called the Popham EP, which is about the estate in North London that my dad's side of the family are from. But my friendship group is basically lads that I went to school with and that live on the moorland, basically. And it was like we'd spend all day in school together, and then there's like a football pitch at the top of the estate where we'd go and play football, and you know, and then you get older and you're just being like little shits and that, out drinking and doing all that sort of stuff till late. But none of it was, I mean, we're all music fans. Like I have like sort of vivid memories of us, you know, like drinking for the first time and smoking joints for the first time over the park when we're like, you know, 14, 15. And there's always music playing in my head. Do you know what I mean? Whether it's like Eminem or a lot of my mates are into like hip hop and stuff, or like Oasis was a big one for all of us. It was kind of like, whenever I hear an Oasis tune, it kind of takes me back to those days. But randomly, I was the only one that kind of started doing my own stuff. Like I used to say to them, let's learn, like, we can make a band. And they'd be like, fuck off. You know what I mean? We can't make a band. What the fuck are you talking about? And they'll all be playing football and I'll be sat over on the bench like a weirdo writing poetry in my phone. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was always my thing. You know what I mean? We've all got our things, and my thing was, like if there was, what's that tune called, Lou? Do you know what I mean? What's that tune that goes like this, Lou? Who's that artist that does this? Blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, I was sort of like the music guy. I don't really know why, but yeah, and it's not like all of the tunes I write really are about more or less that group of lads, really, and the environments that we were in growing up. I sort of just tell the stories that, tell the stories of our lives, sort of growing up around the moorland and the Popham, and it's like, it's weird. It's such a small, like, I don't. It blows my mind that I'm popular out of the Angel. Do you know what I mean? Not that I'm like some fucking megastar, but like I'm doing my first tour in April, and like it's completely sold out. Like, and it's like I'm playing in Dublin and Manchester and Leeds and Birmingham and Brighton, and it fucking blows my mind because I'm like, how do these people like these songs? It's literally about a group of 6 boys. Like, it's so specific to me. But I guess, you know, accidentally there's some universal themes there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and the melodies and the way that you put them together. So you mentioned that you started putting stuff out on YouTube. What kind of gave you the encouragement and impetus to do that? Like, why do you think you started doing that?
It was my friends, really. They was the ones that were like, oh, you put, like, it was almost like a kind of like a new thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I'm 30 now, so this was like 16 years ago, maybe. Like when I started doing tunes. Well, maybe shorter than that. But like, it wasn't like now. It's like, oh, just chuck it on Spotify. Just do this. Just do that. Back then, it was almost like a new thing that people were just putting stuff on YouTube. Like, YouTube hadn't really been around that long, I don't think. I might be remembering that wrong, but in my head it weren't. And yeah, my mates were like, you fucking put it on YouTube, man. Like, put it up. Like, this, ain't you heard about like this person who got discovered on YouTube and stuff like that? Like, I'd never, it was always just like a sort of like a little private passion of mine. I never really had any ambition to do anything with it. So they were the ones that gave me the encouragement. And it sort of didn't take that long until people started finding it, really. Which is crazy to me, still to this day. I can't really, it sort of blows my mind that people are listening.
And you're going on tour you mentioned in April. So over the last couple of years, like you found a bigger audience. What do you think's changed?
I mean, I'd kind of like half was ready to pack it all in. Like I'd written all these tunes, I'd put them on YouTube. I'd got quite a lot of attention from like labels and stuff like that, and I did all the meetings and stuff for a little while. This was like years back, and I kind of, at the time, I wasn't in a very good place like mentally, and I was just like, this is all way too much for me. Like I'm not really, again, it was kind of accidental that like it had led to people being interested. I was just like, I'm doing this in my room as like a pastime. Like I don't really want the pressure of it being like a fucking career. And I'd kind of fucked all that off, and I'd got myself well again. And then I kind of gigged pretty full on and played at every toilet that would have me, and like did an open mic sometimes twice a night, every night, like for years. And I'd sort of self-released stuff, and I'd always just kind of work part-time and try to support it. And it just wasn't like, it was going relatively all right, but not amazingly. And I remember thinking, I think I'm kind of done with it. Like, I don't really feel like doing this anymore. And randomly, I met my now manager, and he'd been like quite a fan of my tunes for a little while, just through watching it on YouTube and stuff. And he was like, why don't we just like record everything and put it out, and then like you can fuck it off then. Do you know what I mean? He was like, don't like just fuck off and leave all these tunes like inside you. Why don't we just record it all and put it out? And yeah, it was a cunning plan of his. I was kind of tricked into it. But we recorded all of the tunes that I'd been writing for years. And I think I met him in the November and made that plan to put it all out. And I think in the April, I signed a record deal. So it was like a quick turnaround, you know what I mean? And yeah, just kind of, I've put out one EP basically, and off the back of that, it's gone really well. And now people seem to be coming to the shows, which fucking blows my mind, do you know what I mean? I'm sort of selling out the venues that I never dreamed I'd sell out. Weirdly, when I met my manager that day, he was like, what would be like the ideal venue? Like, what's something that, you know? And I was like, oh, Union Chapel. There's a, I don't know if you know it, there's like a big church in Maine. Yeah, which is where I live. I've been to gigs there before. It's pretty much like one of the only kind of decent venues around my way. And I was like to him, oh, Union Chapel is like, I'd like to do that. Thinking it would never happen, do you know what I mean? And we'd sold that out this year. So I'm doing that in April. That's the end date of the tour.
Wow, that's incredible.
I think, yeah, it's about time I retire, isn't it? It's nice, like ties it in a nice little bow, just ride off into the sunset. 2 EPs, Union Chapel, and I'm out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, selling that out, that's such a beautiful venue. That's such a quick like change in everything. All of those, you're mentioning that you're playing like, you know, small venues, toilets.
Yeah.
What do you think you were looking for all of those years? Because that's a lot of graft.
You know what though? Like in hindsight, when I look back, not that I'm a fucking Grammy Award winner or anything, I just think it was a lot of graft. But at the time, it didn't feel like graft. It just felt like I'm enjoying this. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I was about to give it up because it does get to a point where I was like, oh, I don't know if I can be fucking bothered to do this anymore. Like playing the same tunes to a room with 3 people here that couldn't give a fuck if I was here. Do you know what I mean? It can be soul destroying, especially when you're playing like shit gigs where no one gives a fuck. But I don't really, when I look back at it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was kind of like, I don't subscribe to that whole 10,000 hours thing, but I know that it's a thing. You know, when people say you know, you've got to do something for 10,000 hours before you can consider yourself like an expert at it or something. And again, I don't consider myself an expert, but I think I accidentally did my 10,000 hours just because I was like, oh, well, you know, I'd do one gig and someone would ask me to do another one, or I'd do one open mic and they'd say, oh, I'll do an open mic on Tuesday. Do you want to come to that one? And I just kind of accidentally went from like one to the other and just kept sort of performing, which is it's kind of weird for me to think that that's what I did, because I'm terrified of performing. Like it's like absolutely terrified of it. So the fact that I did that and there was no money for no other reason than I just thought, I mean, I think deep down I know that there's nothing else I can do. I'm not good at anything else. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm fucking useless. So apart from, you know, singing tunes or writing in my bedroom. So I think it was graft, but when I look back at it, it didn't seem like it at the time. It just seemed like what I should be doing. I don't know why. But yeah, I'm glad I did it though.
Yeah, for sure. With the EPs, are these all songs that you've had for many years? And do you have plans to make a full album?
Well, there's different sort of fates. Like some of these tunes, like that song London's Requiem I was telling you about, I think I wrote that. It's got to be over 10 years ago.
Wow.
It's like the first song that I wrote. You know what I mean? Like I'd done little fucking jokey ditties and stuff like that, but that was the first actual tune. So it was cool to have that next to songs that I'd written 2 years ago or a year ago. And it's kind of the same with the second EP. There are tracks on there that I wrote last year. There are tracks on there that I wrote 6 years ago. I've just got quite a lot of songs that, like, don't get me wrong, lots of them are shit. So it's like I'm only putting out the best stuff that I can. But over the years, yeah, I just kind of stockpiled all these tunes. And so some of them, I don't know, I quite like the fact that like on the EPs, there are tunes from different kind of years of my career. But the plan is to make an album, yeah. I'm kind of in the process of like, I've been writing tunes since like before Christmas and before that as well, that are kind of aiming towards an album. It's kind of taking shape now, which is weird because it was always this distant thing that we were going to get to eventually. And I had all this other music that we were putting out first. This first two EPs, to be honest, in my head, they're like one album. Like they're sort of split in two, but they're kind of part one, part two in my head. But yeah, at the minute I'm writing some tunes, well, a load of tunes, writing every day, and rehearsing for tour. But yeah, album I reckon will be hopefully next year.
Oh, yeah.
If all goes to plan and all goes well. Do you know what I mean?
And one final question. You're making music now that, as I say, like I honestly don't hear music like it that often, and it's really great.
Oh, thanks, man.
We live in a world where, you know, we've got these phones every day, and there's TikTok and Instagram and all this stuff, and the charts are full of different type of music. And I don't want to knock it, but I feel like there's a lot of it out there. As somebody who's like, you're obviously a very good writer, but you're quite competitive in the sense that, or at least you're trying hard to build a career for yourself. Like selling Chapel's amazing. Do you ever get tempted to compromise like artistically with your writing and try and write something that's commercial, or do you think you're going to stay writing this kind of deeply personal music?
I mean, I hope that I've tried, like me and my mate who write together sometimes, my mate B that I was talking about, she's the one we like discovered Led Zeppelin together, and there's some tracks on the next EP and like some album stuff that me and her have written together. We've been friends since we were like 10, and we'd put like different hats on sometimes when we're writing. You know what I mean? Like we'll be like, should we try and write like a pop song, or should we try and write this? And it's always a laugh, but it's always fucking dreadful. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't think I'm capable of doing it. Like I do this thing that I do, and I write about the things that I write about because I don't feel capable of writing about anything else, to be honest, which might be a downfall, but like I don't think I could write like a pop song. Who knows? Maybe I might say this, and next week I'll write some sort of chart topper. But I think, and in terms of compromising, you know, it always sticks with me. I don't know if you've ever seen that. There's like this thing. It's a bit American, a bit cheesy, but you know Jim Carrey, the actor. Have you ever seen that speech he gives when he talks about his old man? And like, I think his old man wanted to be a comedian or something, and he sort of sacrificed his dreams to get this 9-to-5 job. And then he worked at this company and they just laid him off basically. So I'm like paraphrasing what Jim Carrey said, but he's like, you know, do what you want to do, because you could do what you don't want to do and still fail at that. You know what I mean? And that always stuck with me. And I kind of think about that when I'm writing. I'm like, write what you want to write, because you could compromise and try and write something that's going to be popular on TikTok or popular on the charts or make it on a Radio 1 playlist. But you could try and do that and it could also be shit. And then, you know what I mean? You've compromised and you're still where you were when you started. So I don't really have, I don't know, the kind of reaction I get from my audience is really enough for me. Like the messages I get are really touching, and to know that stuff resonates with people on a personal level is literally, that's enough. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's sort of egotistical and selfish, but I'm just writing stuff that I would want to listen to. Like, I feel like, I don't know, I think every film director must have a movie in their head that hasn't been made that they want to watch. Do you know what I mean? And they go about their career trying to make that film. And I kind of feel that way about my music or an album. Like, there's an album in my head that I want to listen to that an artist hasn't released yet. So I'm going to have to make that album myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or just chatting absolute shit, you know what I mean?
That makes sense, and that's the right. It feels like that is the right thing for all artists to be doing, no matter what they're doing. Because the Jim Carrey thing is true. You know, if you try and do something that you're not into to try and find success, you've got more chance of success with the thing that you're actually that you actually want to do, and that comes more from the heart. So thank you so much, Louis, for coming on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to listening to your new stuff. And I hope the tour goes well and that the rehearsals beforehand, you know, get you all prepared.
Get me geared up. Oh, thanks a lot, mate. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.